Have you ever just watched a toddler? I mean, really watched them. They're trying to figure out how to walk without face planting into a coffee table, and yet at the exact same time, they are cracking the code to one of the most complex systems on the entire planet, language. And they do it with no teachers, no textbooks, not a single grammar lesson. It's just an incredible mystery. So today, we're going to go full detective and uncover the secrets of how they pull it off. All right, let's start with a number. The average adult knows something like 60,000 words. And that's a lot for sure, but honestly, that's not the magic trick. The real magic isn't how many words we know. It's that we can combine them in a practically infinite number of ways to create totally new thoughts. I'm willing to bet you have never, ever heard that exact sentence before in your life, right? It's completely bizarre, but you understood it, every single word. That right there is the creative power of language. We can build and understand brand new ideas on the fly. But how? How is that even possible? Well, you can't just throw the words in a blender and hope for the best. If you take those exact same words and just shuffle them up, you get absolute nonsense, word salad. This shows us, plain as day, that there's an invisible set of rules, a hidden order that tells us how to arrange the words. That rulebook is called syntax, and that is the mystery we need to solve. This is it. This is the big question. How in the world do these tiny humans become masters of grammar without anyone teaching them? It's fascinated scientists for decades. So, like I said, let's put on our detective hats and start searching for clues. So clue number 1 is the idea of syntax itself. Think of it as the secret blueprint for a sentence. It's the reason Susie punched Billy is a totally different story from Billy punched Susie, even though the words are identical. The meaning, you see, is baked right into the structure. To get a feel for how powerful these rules are, just think about basic math. You've probably never seen this exact addition problem before, but you know exactly how to solve it. Why? Because you know the rule for addition. And once you know that rule, you can handle any two numbers I throw at you. This idea is called compositionality, and it is the absolute engine of language. And this predictability is so crucial. If I make up a word, dax, and then I tell you about a red dax, you know exactly what I mean. The rule of simple, the adjective describes the noun. But if I say house dax, what is that? Is it a dax that is a house? A dax that lives in a house? You'd just be guessing. Our ability to communicate new ideas instantly depends on these predictable compositional rules. Okay, so we've got our first big clue. Word order is governed by predictable rules. But is that the whole story? Is a sentence just a flat string of beads on a necklace? Or is there something deeper going on? Let's check out our next piece of evidence. This classic Groucho Marx joke is brilliant. And it only works because there's a hidden ambiguity in the structure. The exact same line of words can mean two totally different things depending on how our brain groups them together. Let's break this down. The first time you hear it, this is what your brain does automatically. It groups an elephant into one chunk, and in my pajamas into another chunk that describes me, the shooter. Simple, logical, makes perfect sense. But then the punchline hits, and it forces your brain to see a second, ridiculous possibility. Suddenly, the words, an elephant in my pajamas, all clump together into one hilarious image. This joke reveals the secret blueprint. Language isn't just a flat line. It's hierarchical. Words team up to form bigger building blocks. And these clumps, these building blocks, they have a name. Linguists call them constituents. A phrase like, the fluffy dog, or an elephant in my pajamas, acts like a single unit. Realizing that language is built this way, with chunks inside of chunks, is a huge leap. And somehow, toddlers figure this out. And they don't just figure it out, they do it at a breathtaking speed. I mean, look at this. Around 18 months, they're in the two-word stage, more juice. By 2, they're making little telegraphic sentences like doggy no bite finger. And then, by the time they get to kindergarten, the whole system is pretty much mastered. It is an unbelievable sprint to grammatical competence. Which brings us right back to our central mystery. How are they doing this? We've seen what they're learning, this incredibly complex, layered system of rules. So now, let's investigate the prime suspects for how they're learning it. Okay, In our investigation, there are two main suspects on the table. Suspect number one is the idea that kids learn from meaning. Suspect number two is the idea that they are master pattern finders, basically little statisticians. So let's examine the evidence for each. All right, let's look at suspect number one, a theory called semantic bootstrapping. The idea is actually pretty simple. Kids use the meaning of a word as a clue to its grammatical job. So they see a ball and they hear the word ball, and their brain goes, okay, words for things are probably nouns. They see someone jump and hear jump, and think words for actions are probably verbs. It's like using meaning to get a foothold, to start building the scaffolding of grammar. Now, suspect number two is a whole different beast. This theory says kids are using what's called distributional evidence. The idea is that they are incredible, unconscious statisticians. They listen to the fire hose of language around them and just track the patterns, which words tend to show up in the same spots in a sentence. Here's a great example of how that would work. A toddler's brain is just listening, and it hears, the dog is cute, the bottle is full, the ball is round. Over and over, it hears this pattern, this frequent frame, the blank is. Pretty soon, the brain notices that all the words that fit in that blank, dog, bottle, ball, toy, must be the same kind of word. And just like that, it's discovered the category of nouns, purely from statistics, without even knowing what the words mean. So it's clear that kids are incredible learners. They're using meaning, they're using statistics, they're soaking up everything from the world around them. But is that enough? Can the environment really explain the full depth of their grammatical genius? This is where our investigation takes a turn. Let's look at one final and I think mind-bending piece of evidence. Take a look at this sentence. The book that is on the table is red. Pretty simple. But just notice there are two uses of the word is in there.
Okay, now here's the puzzle. If you want to turn that sentence into a question, which is do you move to the front? The first one or the second one? Just think about it for a second.
You knew it instantly, right? It's obviously, is the book that is on the table red? But here's the crazy part. Why did you know that? A much simpler rule would be just move the first is, you see. But nobody does that. The rule we all instinctively use depends on the sentence's deep, hierarchical structure, the building blocks we talked about. And here's the real kicker. Studies have shown that little kids never make the simple mistake. They never just move the first is. They somehow know the complex, structure-based rule, even though there's almost no way they were ever explicitly taught it. Evidence like this points many linguists to a pretty stunning verdict, a theory called universal grammar. The idea is that we are not born as blank slates. Instead, we're born with a kind of pre-installed operating system for language, an innate blueprint that guides us toward learning a real human grammar and stops us from even considering the impossible ones. And that leaves us with a truly profound question to chew on. If the toddler's secret isn't just about clever learning, if the basic structure of language is actually a shared instinct hardwired into our DNA, what does that tell us about the very nature of the human mind? The next time you hear a little kid stringing a sentence together, remember, you're not just hearing them learn. You might be witnessing the very blueprint of human thought unfolding before your eyes.